Okay, so hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kim, and I'm going to be talking about preparing your photographs for exhibition today. So let's see. All right, why won't it go to the next slide?
Should just hit your page up.
There we go. Okay, so just a little bit about me. I did graduate from UNF in 2017. I do have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. My concentration was in photography. I also had minors in painting, drawing, printmaking, and I got a second minor in business administration, which is what I initially started college for, but changed partway through. I've worked in the UNF Gallery of Art with Jim Japer. He was the gallery director and also a professor who taught curating at UNF. So I spent 2 years there, and then I've been involved with a couple other organizations, the main one being the Art Center Cooperative, where some of my duties included at one time being the president, secretary, I was curator, I was the photographer, I did inventory. So I had many hats in that gallery. So I really enjoyed it, but right now I've taken a hiatus from a lot of stuff. Some important information that Leslie wanted me to make sure you understood. Part of why we're doing this is because of the show that we're going to be doing at the library. That is going to be coming up for November. And the committee has decided that was put together, and we decided that we were going to frame the photographs for this particular show. So the first thing is by September 1st, you need to upload the files to Jerry, and he will send out the links again to let everybody know where to send the information. So anything that you might want to submit, you'll send through there. I believe we decided on 3 images, and depending on how many participants we have, we'll try to get as many in as possible. You will be notified on September 15th of the selection of your photographs. October 27th through the 30th is when we will deliver the photographs to the library, and they need to be framed and matted and properly wired when you drop them off. We will install the exhibit either on the 1st or the 2nd. Leslie's going to let me know on that. It'll come down at the end of November. They also decided that the maximum size for the photographs is going to be 16 by 20, and the minimum size, the print can be no smaller than 8 by 10. So if anybody has any questions of that, you can always ask myself, Leslie, or Jerry. I can't remember who else was on that committee for that. So, but more information will be coming out in regards to the selection and whatnot for the show. So some of the topics that I'm gonna basically cover today are choosing frames, composition, clarity, matting, and your hanging hardware. When it comes to frames, one of the first things you gotta know if you're going to be framing a photograph for your exhibit is going to be what are your size requirements. So when you're looking at the this particular frame that I have here, you'll notice it says that it's 8 by 10. The 8 by 10 is the mat size that is inside the frame. The picture size is 5 by 7, but on this particular one, the frame itself is 10 inches by 12 inches. So you've got to be aware of that and what the requirements are depending on the exhibit that you're preparing your photographs for. Another thing that you want to think about when you're choosing your frames is the color of the frame. Basically, you want your photograph to be the standout, not the frame. I like to keep it simple. And if you're gonna go with a color, think about the image that you're going to be displaying in the frame. And I do have some examples of that in the next slide. But you also want to make sure for D-rings that you're going to be hanging on, that the frame is thick enough in this area here in order to attach your D-ring. So you don't want anything too skinny because it'll just crack the frame. So that's something to also think about when you're selecting your frame. So some of the choices that I've made in the past is I've picked a brown frame to go with this image, black frame, and this one was a gray. But when you're
That's fine.
doing it and thinking about the frame that you want to choose, my go-to generally is a black frame. It's cleaner. It allows your photograph to be seen and not have people looking at the frame that it's in. You don't want anything that's very ornate because that might take away from your image. When you're composing your image, you always want to think about how it's going to be placed within the mat or the frame for your composition. You don't want, I mean, I guess we're all really good or learning. I'm still learning how to compose the picture when you're taking the shot, but you also need to consider it when you're getting ready to put it inside the frame or the mat if you're going to do a mat. So you always want to know the inside dimension of the mat. So when you go to print, it'll fit in there properly and it won't be like too big and you lose half the image when you're trying to put it inside the mat. So any questions yet? Okay. You also want to make sure to consider your clarity when you're doing your image, especially when you get ready to print. You got to know your image size, and first off, make sure the image was in focus and not really blurry. And when you are getting ready to print, you have to be careful, because if you have to print larger than what your original image size is, you're going to get either some blurriness or it's going to look really pixelated, and you don't want that in your images when you're blowing them up. So always look at the size before you print to see what it's going to look like when you get ready to print the image. Oh, and a full disclaimer on all of this, most of these images that I have on my slides, I actually had to take with my cell phone because unfortunately all my camera equipment is in the closet that's buried in my art room because of renovation. So I apologize if some of these don't look really good at this time. Okay, when you
could I ask a question, Kim, back on
sure.
that? So if I were to want to put an image in at the 16 by 20 and I blow it up and it looks like it really has lost a bit of its clarity, but when I print it at 8 by 10, the clarity seems to be there. Is that just a mirage in my own mind, or can the clarity really be there at 8 by 10 when not by 16 by 20?
It will be there. You can have a clear picture at a small size if the original size was a smaller print anyway. It's just when you try to start, and I guess in a lot of camera settings, that's why I always shoot raw with my camera, because it allows for a larger image. So when I go to print, I'm not having to blow up. I actually have to shrink them down so I still get my clarity. But you have to be careful. Like a lot of times cell phones, will take smaller images, or JPEGs will sometimes be smaller images. So you want to just check your size when you're editing in whichever program you use. I tend to use Photoshop. I don't know how to use Lightroom. So I always look at my image size and make sure that it's not a small one that I'm trying to blow up, because I have had images that when I go to make them bigger, they just don't, the quality is not there. So you want to make sure you do have the good quality. But yeah, so check that it'll look good as an 8x10, because that's probably that might be what the original size was. But if you try to make it bigger, sometimes you lose the detail, you lose the clarity, it gets pixelated. So there's a few different things that can go wrong with it. So does that answer your question?
It does, but and thank you for that, but from a competition or a judge's perspective, will the lack of clarity at an 16x20 still be noticeable as an 8x10, even though I don't notice it?
If the original size was an 8x10 and you tried to blow it up to a 16x20, yeah, they would look at that and they probably wouldn't, they would probably look at that as a negative. But if you printed it the 8x10 and submitted it as the 8x10, I think you would be fine. But yeah, they do, in cases that I've seen, they do look at the quality of the print at the size that it's printed at. If it's sent to a show and it's hung and they're judging by the, I know when I've looked at things and had to pick out stuff from my experiences, there were images, the photographs, if they weren't clear, if there was the pixelation, then I would just kind of walk by it, because especially if it's something you're going to want to sell too, people are going to want to have that clarity. And if you blew up a small image, you're not going to have that clarity, and it'll be passed over. That's for me personally, that's what I would do. So I like to see the clarity, unless there was like one portion of the photograph that you really wanted in focus, but then the rest of it you wanted softer. That's a little bit different story. But if you're going for like the whole image, I don't know, the one on my screen, for the most part, it's all in clear. Of course, I took a picture of a picture with my cell phone. You know, I know I see a little loss of something here, maybe just because of the angle I took the picture of, down in the bottom right corner. But the seashell, the center part is like the clear part. But if I tried to blow this one up, I would lose so much detail in the seashell itself that I'd be disappointed. So, and I don't know if I can go back a slide. So as you can see, like on the left side, my picture of the rose lily is a little more clear, but I mean, and I did play with these to make it look more pixelated for the purpose of this show. But if I were to blow that small picture up bigger, it would probably look like the one on the right where it looks really pixelated. And most people wouldn't pick that because it's not a nice, crisp, clean flower like the one on the left under the word clarity. Is that better?
Very helpful,
Question,
thank
Kim.
you.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're talking about exhibition here, so you don't use Lightroom very much, but I'll go back to Lightroom. And if I'm hearing you correctly, we should export this photograph in what we're printing size, right?
Right.
And then
Yes.
look at it on a big screen, correct?
You can. Something I've done, because I was able to, my printer died. I was able to go in and print just a small section of my photographs a lot of times to see what the quality of the print would look like before I had the whole thing printed on the side. So if you have a photo printer, even a small printer, you can always go in and print just a small section of your photograph to see what it's going to look like when it's printed at the size you want.
Okay, but if let's say, for example, I'm focusing on one area and one area is blurred a little bit. You
Right.
would just pick the part that's in focus then, that's what you're saying?
Well,
The print.
now, okay, so a lot of times we blur our backgrounds
Right.
depending on the image we're taking. So if your focus on the image was just like the center part of the image, maybe there's one flower and you blurred the background, you would want to make sure that flower was crisp and clear. Even though the background's blurred, you don't want the pixelation in that when you print it.
Okay. All right.
So, so that's a couple different things you have to take into consideration when you're looking at your image. Like the image of my flower, that image fills the paper. So, and I didn't really blur anything too much. I mean, I've got a little hot spot to the right where the petals are there, but the rest of this is very much in focus. But if you start to blow, if this was an 8x10 image when I took the photo and I want to make it a 16x20, when I start blowing up that image, that's when you're either going to get a lot of blurriness or a lot of pixelation. So that's what when I'm talking about clarity, as far as blowing up the image, that's what you want to be careful of. Now
Okay,
you
thanks.
also, yeah, I mean,
I think I know that.
yeah, you want to make sure when you're taking the picture also that, you know, it is in focus and the parts you want blurred are blurred, but the piece of the picture you want to stand out, that it's nice and sharp and clear.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, any more questions on that part of it? Okay. Now mats, when you're choosing mats, again, keep it simple. You don't want the mat to overwhelm the image. I generally go with just a white mat. Even if I'm choosing a little bit different color frame, I stick with a white mat because again, I want my picture to stand out more than anything else. I want people to see the image and not the frame or the mat. And try to avoid like too much color. If you're going to go with a color, a gray or even a black, but you don't want to start getting into too many big colors with photographs. I'm personally again, keep it simple, let the photograph speak to you, to the audience, not the frame or the mat. You also, when you're printing your image, you want to make sure that it's going to fit inside of the mat. So that's why you need to know what size is the mat. You don't want to have issues where when you print the image, you see the white of the paper. You know, especially if it's just at the top or on the corner. You want your image to fit within the mat size or within the frame. I know you can go in, I don't know about Lightroom, but in Photoshop, you're able to go in and create the image to where it looks like there's a mat around it. So I took my lily and I added a little bit extra border to get it to the size that I want. On the one on the left, I did just a straight white border, so it looks like it's in a mat. And on the other side, I added a little black trim around it. So it creates the mat. But you want to make sure that if you go this route, instead of buying a mat, that when you print the image fits inside the frame. So you want to make sure the image goes all the way around. So when it says that it's like this one here is the 8 by 10, that's this size here where it's fitting. So you want to make sure if you print your image and create your own matte look border, that it fits inside this area here. So if I were to print this image, I would want to make sure it's printed 8 by 10 so it fills the whole frame. Then that way you don't have to buy the mat. And then the next important thing is your hardware and the wire that you're going to use. I do have a video here. It is, all right, I'm gonna stop share for a minute. Or maybe I can just do this. It is based on a painting, but this will apply to, this can apply to your framing when you do frames. It's the same concept on a painting or on a frame. So I'm going to play this and let me know if anybody has any issues with the sound or. Can everybody see and hear that okay? Yes, no?
I can't see a video. I can hear it though.
Can't hear it and I can't see it.
Okay, I guess it's.
Still seeing your presentation and your.
All right,
thumbs
so
up.
let me
when you
stop
stop-
share
stop
on
your-
that.
Stop your screen share, and then when you do it again, share
Okay.
hit the screen share and do the entire screen, not just the PowerPoint.
Okay, so let me go over here and see, where am I at now? Share screen. All right, let's go this one.
And yeah, share the screen. There you go.
Better?
Yes.
Yep.
Can't hear though.
Well, you do have the link that we can look at it.
Yeah, the
After-
link is, hold on. Yeah, the link is going to be in the PowerPoint presentation. And what I can do with that is that with the PowerPoint, I can, I've saved it as a PDF, so I can send that. If anybody wants a copy of the PDF, I can send that to you, and I've got a copy of the link in there. But I can go over some of the stuff as I'm talking anyway. So let's
Okay,
go.
would you want to put back up that, if you put back up that screen, we can all take a photograph of it and we know what it is. That's what I
Okay,
did, anyway.
Kim, are you doing your audio on the computer or on your phone?
I'm on a computer.
So the audio is on your computer and we still can't hear it. That's weird.
Yeah, probably.
You could probably show the video and just tell us what she's doing.
I'll send the link, but I can basically, I'm going to talk about a lot of what she's doing anyway.
Okay.
So, all right, let's go from, all right, we were here. All right, so, but there's the link if anybody wants to go in and watch it. So with one of the things that when you're choosing your hardware, you want to look at your wires. I have found that I like the coated wire the best, because when you start doing just the braided wire, they tend to fray, and these things hurt when they separate. You know, I've had so many slivers in my fingers from these. They're not fun. So, I mean, if you want to use them, you can use them, but personally, I like the coated. And you can get all this stuff. I got this big roll. I can't remember how much I spent for it on it, but I got this off Amazon, and that's the brand. So if you guys wanted to look, if you're doing a lot of wire hanging and for your photographs, then buying a big spool is really good. This is 500 feet. So I have plenty for a while. But you also want to look at the weight size. So this is 43 pounds. So you want to take that into consideration when you're choosing your wires to hang your pictures. Now, if you have a really big picture that's heavy, you want to make sure you pick the right weight for that. If your picture weighs 100 pounds, this might not hold up very well. So you got to stop and think about what the weight of your picture is that you're hanging when you're choosing your wire. But again, Home Depot, Lowe's, Amazon, Michael's, you can get them at any of the wire and hanging kits from any of those stores. So the one thing with the coated wire, they tend to be just a little bit harder to work with because of the coating, and depending on the thickness of the wire too. So you want to look at that when you're dealing with it. And I always keep a pair of needle nose pliers to help me when I'm pulling the wire. And I'll also show you the D hooks. And again, the D rings I bought off Amazon also. And you can get ones that have a single screw or the two. And again, it depends on how big your frame is and the weight and everything, because they come in different sizes. You can get some that are smaller, and then you get some that are a little bit bigger. They have either the rounded shape like in the picture, or they got the ones that have more of a point on them. And in the image, you can see I've got two different ways that I have them on there. A lot of it's going to depend on, again, how big the picture is, and the two don't always fit on some of these frames. So you don't want it to be sticking off. You want it to sit snugly on there. So a lot of times I'll do them this way, but the best thing is if you can angle it just a little bit, it helps to bring the wire up where you need it to be. So when you're doing this in the video, and I don't know if I can do this backwards or not, and I don't know how well people can see. That's why I wore a black shirt, to hopefully so people could see. So when you're putting, let's go with this one. When you're putting your wire in, you go in through the top and out, and you're gonna bring it around. Let's see if I can do this. Bring it around, and you're gonna go back in the opposite way.
Could you lift your hands a bit, Kim?
I'm trying.
There we go. That's better.
Okay, is that a little bit better there? I'm trying to give myself enough wire here to work. All right. So right now, when I put it in, I went through the top of the hook and came out and came across the top and went back in through, and then I'm bringing it so it creates this loop kind of like this. Are you able to see that okay?
If you stop screen sharing for a minute, we'll see you bigger.
All right, let's stop. Okay.
Much better.
So it's in like that. So I went in here first. That's the bottom one. I went in. So I'm looking at it backwards from you guys. So you're going to go in through the top of the hook, around, bring it up, and then go back in. So when it looks like, so one wire is in the front and one wire is in the back. And when you pull, this is going to create a knot. And a lot of this is just practice and more practice. It took me forever to get used to doing this. So this is going to keep your wire from slipping. And then you can just wrap it around, and I usually try to do nice, neat coils, and then you'll cut off whatever extra that you're going to have. So it's going to look kind of like that. And I know it's a little hard to see, but if anybody wants me to get with them in person and go over this, I'll be more than happy to do that. So I'll sit with anybody if you submit for the show and you want to have me help you wire it, we can meet up somewhere and I can show you. I have my own little salon right in Atlantic Beach. Next to where it used to be LA Fitness, they're changing the name of it. So I've got my own salon space, so I can always meet anybody there anytime I want. And I can show you how to do it. Because I think most everybody's in Atlantic Beach or Neptune Beach or down that way. So just let me know. My email is going to be at the end of this presentation. So you'll be able to contact me or email me. So
Okay, Kim, do you know what the name of that knot is?
I don't know that there's an actual name for it.
Okay,
I
sorry,
just
Mary.
know, I just know what
Sorry,
I do.
I'm married to a sailor and he's a knot guy, so
I was
there's
thinking-
like 10 different loops. I was just gonna look at up. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was thinking
well,
it
the
probably had a name.
The video might show a little bit better on
Yeah.
how to do it. But there's so many videos that you can Google to find how to do, like, to properly wire a frame. That's a lot of time. That's how I learned a lot of stuff, was just by Googling and looking and seeing what was available out there. So again, just let's see, from current slide, just picking, just playing around with it. Just get some D-hooks. If you've got a frame or an old piece of wood, screw one in and just practice until it feels comfortable. And that's how I learned. So you want to make sure. And another thing, when you're wiring your pictures, you have to stop and think about which way you are hanging your photograph. So I grabbed this one because I've got it wired 2 ways. That way I can play around and change up which, because I reuse my frames and my mats if they're still clean, if they're not damaged. If I didn't sell it, then I will put in a different photograph for the next show. So in this case, I have it wired so I can either do vertical or horizontal or vertical. A rule of thumb that is out there most of the time is they say to put it 1/4 to 1/3 of the way down with your D-hooks. The only thing that I try to take into consideration, if you know what type of hanging system is in the space, it might help a little bit. Now, I know at the library, they have the wires, and having hung a show there for other artwork, one of the biggest issues that I found is if you're not wired right, when you hang your artwork on the wall, it's going to lean off the wall. It'll because of the weight of the picture or how much wire there is. So I always take that into consideration when I'm wiring something like this one here. I might adjust in there because I think this is too far down for this particular image, for that hanging system. Now, to hang it on my wall here at home would be different. But a general rule of thumb is when you hang this, you want to make this cut, but you don't want this wire to go above the frame. So when you pull it up this way, you want to make sure it's about 1 inch below the top, because you've got the hooks over there, I think are maybe 1 inch long. So you don't want them to show behind your artwork or your photograph and your frame. So keep the wire, you want to keep it taut, but you don't want to have you don't want it hanging up here. So when you do it, I usually will pull it tight and pull it up like this. And then I'm pretty good about where it's going to sit when I hang it. A lot of times, if you've got a hook at home, you can hang it and see how it hangs on your wall. And that'll be a little bit different than the string wires, because the string wires tend to move a little bit. So it's not like a nail in your wall. So it's a little bit different. So if you're aware of where your artwork is going, you can adjust this accordingly So for me, knowing what it's like over there, I would probably pull this up, tighten this a little bit more so that it doesn't have as much give on the wall. And these are not wired quite the right way, but they don't slide either. Another thing that you can do, which I haven't done, is they've got the little pads or the little rubber dots. If you put those on the bottom corner so that they're not seen of your artwork, that will help keep it off the wall a little bit. And I actually just learned this as I was researching for this presentation. What it does is it helps airflow behind your photograph, so it's not pulling any moisture that might be in the wall, so it better protects it. I don't have that written in the presentation, but make note of that. So if you can, I mean, it's not going to hurt to put the little felt dots or the little rubber dots on the back to help keep it off the wall a little bit. And the rubber ones will help keep it from sliding on the wall too, which keeps it from like tipping and turning. Another thing, when you're screwing in your D hooks, you want to remember, and I know it sounds weird to point this out, but when you have your screws, you have to think about the size of the screw that you're using. You don't want a screw that's going to be too long that when you screw it in is going to poke out the front of your frame. And don't laugh, but it has happened. I have seen it. It blows my mind. So always make sure that the screws that you're using are not too big, and you also want to make sure that they're not too small, because you want them to anchor into your frame and not pop out, because we don't want our photographs and the frames to be falling on the floor. A lot of frames today come either with glass or plexiglass. So you want to be careful when you're choosing those also to make sure that there's no scratches in the plexiglass. It's important to have cleanliness with your frames. You don't want these little marks on them. You don't want the scratches and the dings because that takes away from it. You also want to make sure that when you put your photograph and you put the mat in there, that you don't have all these little spots and lint and scratches in the glass and scratches in the plexiglass. I saw where somebody submitted a piece of artwork for a show and the plexiglass was cracked. That, for me, that is, I guess in my respect, to me it's a little unprofessional, and I try not to judge because I don't know what that person's going through. But when you're submitting for a show or to be in an exhibit or a gallery, you don't want those little things to be in there. It's important to have nice, clean, well-maintained frames, well-maintained glass, no lint, no dust, because that'll take away, because my eye is drawn to those little specks. You know, when I see the scratches, like in this particular frame, that I accidentally scratched it myself, but I'm gonna sand it down a little bit and repaint them, and then I can repurpose them again. But stuff like that, to me, it takes away from the image and from the photograph that you're looking at the time. So those are some things to take into consideration when you're doing all of that. So are there any other questions?
I know I have framed in the past, and you know, I'm clean, I'm trying to do the Windex on the glass and everything. And I put it in, and no matter how clean I am, I still see some little speck of dust. Is there, so I've tried a few things. I've gone with wearing gloves, I've gone with compressed air. What would you recommend? Because I know I have seen it even being as clean as I thought I could be.
Well, when you're wiping down the glass, what type of cloth or item are you using to wipe the glass with?
I'm probably using a paper towel.
Okay,
Paper towel.
me personally, I use newspaper.
Really?
Because
Okay.
paper towels have lint and fuzzies on them.
Okay.
And I actually use newspaper, a little bit of Windex with newspaper.
Good. That's a good tip. Thank you.
That helps. Yeah. Anything else?
No, that's
I have a
it.
question.
Okay.
Glass or acrylic?
You know, a lot of times it's going to depend on where the exhibit is. Glass obviously is heavier than acrylic. Now, if you found a show in New York that you were submitting to and they accepted your image and wanted you to mail it to them, they would probably prefer you might want the acrylic too, but double check, because they might prefer the acrylic over the glass. One, because then you won't have the breakage, and it's not as heavy to mail and send. For the library show, it's not going to matter. So it's going to be a preference at that point, depending on the frame that you choose, whether it comes with the glass or with the acrylic. The acrylic does scratch and break a lot easier. So you know, if you're in a local show, maybe go with glass if that is allowable. Some galleries even don't want glass because if it falls and breaks, somebody can get hurt. So check with wherever it is that you're going to exhibit to find out what their requirements are. But for the most part, I have both. So I think a lot of mine are, no, that one's acrylic. It just depends on the frames. I buy all my frames at Michael's, to be honest. And I always watch for the buy one, get two free. So they have those coupons, they have the ads, sign up for the emails. You get all kinds of stuff for like discounts and sales. So they'll a lot of times have the buy one, get two free or buy one, get one. So I always watch for those. Some come with mats, some don't have mats. So you have to take that into consideration. And I think that was something I was going to ask too. I know I talked with Leslie, and the sizes for this show, we said 16 by 20, but that's 16 by 20 for a mat size. And the frame is actually 18 by 22. So we might need to be a little bit more specific, because I don't know that there are actual frames that are 16 by 20 frames, because you'd have to look for a 14 by 18, and I think that's an odd size. So I don't know if we need to clarify that, Jerry, but I know we had decided on the 16 by 20 for the maximum size.
That's a standard frame, yeah.
Yeah, I would think
Yeah.
just a standard.
That's a
frame.
standard mat, not
No,
the frame.
No, the frames I've purchased are 16 by 20. The ones that we had on display at John Rutherford's office are 16 by 20.
Okay. Because I know, like I said, I checked on mine. I measured a lot of them. The mat sizes were the 16 by 20. That's why I was saying, like, even this, it says 8 by 10, but the frame is 12 by 14.
Yeah,
10
by 20
by
is
12.
usually, 16 by 20 is usually outside of the mat.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the mat size that fits in here is
Right.
that, because that's my understanding. I don't know that the frame size, because I know my frame size on a lot of my ones that had the 16 by 20. As a matter of fact, I have a couple that say 16 by 20, but the frame itself is 18 by 22. The image size inside here is 16 by 20.
If that could get clarified, that would be great, because that was one of my questions. Is there a maximum frame size? rather than
Yeah.
the actual picture size.
I think we were going by maximum of 16 by 20, only because with the space over there at the library, if we start getting too big, that would be less that we would be able to hang. So that's why we had decided for this show that it was going to be the max size of 16 by 20. So I think that's the frame,
That's the
but
frame size. Yeah, that's-
okay.
yeah.
So that's what we're gonna do, is 16 by 20, including the frame.
Okay.
And that's something else when you're looking at, like, if you want to submit to other shows, you have to look at whether, when they say the size, does that include the frame or is that just the image size? So always get clarification on that when you are submitting to shows and thing, is like, what does that include the frame? And if you're submitting to something that you wanted to do, like this here, you had something you wanted to submit in here. When I write sizes, I write the finished size, which would be the 10 by 12, not the 8 by 10. So you gotta take that into consideration if you're submitting to something other than the library. Even with the library, I don't know, I'm not sure if we're gonna put sizes on the tags when we do that, because I don't know if people are gonna wanna put their stuff for sale. Are we selling stuff, having stuff for sale there also,
I
Jerry?
don't believe so, no.
Okay, all right, so it's just an exhibit. So we don't
Yeah.
need the sizes. So, but a lot of times, like, when I was with the art center, when we had our labels, we were putting on what the finished size of the photograph or the artwork was. So when people asked if they wanted to purchase it, they would have the actual size to figure out if it'll fit in their space.
I have another question.
Sure.
When, for matting, can you do an offset? In other words, where there's a lot more white space below and you have it set on top? Is that an okay, as long as the overall size is correct?
Yeah, as long as as long as the overall size is correct, I think that would be fine. I actually had an image one time that I did that I had a matte special cut. It was a circle. So the circle was at the top part of the frame and there was a little more white at the bottom. As long as the image fits inside the mat properly, you don't want to see that white strip from the image inside the mat. That just, to me, doesn't, it throws me off. That's my personal opinion. It drives me crazy. So I want to see the image fitting in the mat the right way.
Kim, so for the show, we said if the frame rather is 16 by 20, then the image that we would normally be working with, if we're going to have 2 inches on each side, that sounds like you were saying that's what, so our image would be then 12 by 16.
If your full frame size, okay, so if this was 16 by 20 and you wanted a 2-inch mat all the way around.
Is that what we're supposed to do? I was late.
You can have, I've got like different size mats on, like this one here, the mat is, it's probably like 2 inch. I think the sides are a little bit smaller than the bottom part. I think the bottom's a little bit thicker. So it depends on the mat. As long as your image fits inside the mat. The only thing they don't want is they do not want images smaller than 8 by 10. So you can have a 16 by 20 with an 8 by 10 picture in the center. It don't matter how big your mat is. You can choose whatever size you want your mat to be, as long as your image in the center or inside the frame is no smaller than 8 by 10.
Okay, and so we're deviate, if we want to deviate on the size of the mat, no big deal. It does, for the show, it does not need to all be the same.
Right.
Okay.
Just go ahead.
I'm sorry, Kim, just so that I understand. So the actual size, when you say frame, that's the external dimensions of the
Yes,
The external, the entire thing, that's the largest size it could be is 16 by 20.
right.
We need clarification on this because if you look at Michael's sites or Hobby Lobby, when they say 16 by 20, I believe they're
That's
talking
the
about the
mat
mat.
size.
It's not
Yeah.
about the frame.
Correct.
Exactly.
Right.
It's gonna make it a lot harder.
And I just measured mine. I mean, I always buy a 16 by 20 and it's larger than 16
And
by
it's 18
20.
by 22 probably.
Exactly, that's what
Yeah.
mine are. So
That's why I was trying to figure out.
This 60, and Leslie, I don't know where Leslie is, but.
She's out of town right now.
Oh, is she? Okay.
Yes.
So when you see, if you go onto Michael's right now and you look and you pull up 16 by 20, that's the mat size. That's not the
Yes.
frame size.
Exactly.
And 16 by 20 is a more common size to print in.
Exactly. But
Yes.
it's 11 by 14 fits perfectly in there.
Yeah, but usually they say on the frame, both the interior mat size as well as the frame size.
Right, no, but.
Not always.
No.
No.
Mm-mm.
They
I know
don't,
they-
they don't. Like this one right here, because this is
Yeah,
still the
look at
one from the store that
Yeah.
I never used.
Right, yeah.
This is 8 by 10, and it's matted too, and this is 5 by 7. So the image size is 5 by 7. The mat is 8 by 10, but the frame is 10 by 12. That's why I specifically put that on the slide, because
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute. So I measured everything to
Yeah.
make sure. But yeah, even though this says 8 by 10, the frame itself is a 10 by 12.
So
But
we
it
need to
does
get
not
clarification
state
from
that
Les.
on here at
Yeah,
all.
I think we do. But
Well, when
think-
I asked Leslie, she said no, 16 by 20 was the max size. So I think everybody's gonna have to go a little bit smaller.
So
I've
then
never
if
seen
you buy
anybody-
if you buy from Michael's, what frame, like they're selling by the mat size.
Yeah, they sell by the mat size.
So we could be.
I think, and I don't want to make the judgment call on this, so we'll have to, for the committee that is judging, I guess, I can't remember everybody who was on that Zoom call. I know that's why I was trying to clarify, but she said no bigger than 16 by 20. So I'm going to assume that is the overall size. Again, the space at the library, in the past, everybody's done been able to do the 16 by 20s because they were only matted.
Mat, exactly.
That nothing
Yeah.
was framed before.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let's talk with her when she's back, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
we'll get more information out to everybody right before. I mean, you have until September 1st to submit your images.
Mhm.
And then from that point, when it comes time to print, or I was trying to find my notes, the turn-in date on that stuff was, oh, and I printed this so small I can't see. You've got until December or October 27th through October 30th to drop off the stuff. So we'll be able to clarify and make sure that all the information on the final sizes that can be submitted will be sent out to everyone before you print any of your stuff. So that way you can make sure that they're printed to the right size.
Mm. Another little tip, I don't know if they still do it, but Hobby Lobby had a policy, if you purchase their frame and mat and everything, they will frame it, put a dust cover on it and wires and everything. I don't know if they still have it. Do you know?
I don't know because I don't shop at Hobby Lobby.
Yeah. But
I don't get
know
as
they
many
moved.
coupons.
Yeah.
The last time I was there, they weren't doing framing at all.
Oh, really? This is the
Right.
one at the town center?
No, it
Oh.
was, oh gosh, where was I? No, off of Old St. Augustine Road.
Okay, all right.
Do you think
Well,
that
yeah.
was just because they stopped doing it for COVID?
Well,
Maybe.
No,
Possible.
I think it was before COVID.
Oh,
okay.
I'm just used to doing my own. That's why I said if anybody has any questions or wants to sit down and do a hands-on for me to show them how to do it, I'll be more than happy to sit down with anybody. You know, just let me know ahead of time and we can try to schedule a time that's convenient to do it. I could probably even bring some stuff to a meeting and before or after, if anybody wants to hang out, I can
Yeah.
do something real quick. So, Liz.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Well, it's stuff that I love to do. I love helping people, and I want everybody's stuff to be nice. So, any other questions?
I have sort of a general question too.
Okay.
I've seen kind of very little about the actual topic other than just First Coast. I mean, is there anything more specific that we're going to find out about this? Like, is there a specific geographic range? Does it include Gainesville, St. Augustine, Palm Coast? And then are there any other specific topics that are just life on the First Coast or something is all I know? Did I miss something?
I could tell you, here's what the discussion was, right? And the discussion was, we'll say Jacksonville. Well, does that mean Jacksonville Beach? Does that mean St. John's? And so what we said was, let's just make it a generic First Coast, because we don't want to limit people too much. If you got all the way down to St. Augustine, that's not really what we were thinking. It was more about around here, so that if you go into the library, you're going to see things you're familiar with in this area if you live in this area. So that was the whole idea about saying First Coast. Did
Okay,
that
that
answer your
helps.
question? Okay.
Yeah, helpful. Thank you.
So it could be a bird in the First Coast. No, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one's going to know
Yeah.
in that case.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, as long as it was taken in this area, I guess that was what
Yeah.
we were kind of leaning towards.
Yeah. Well, I think the big thing is to sort out the size, whether that is the frame size, and when Leslie gets back, you know.
Okay.
And it has to be easy to purchase also too. I haven't looked, but is it easy to find a frame size for 16 by 20 at Michael's, for example?
Yeah.
It is?
Well,
The
even
frame size?
No.
not where a frame itself is 16 by 20. I know that's the inside dimensions of it. But there are some that are smaller. I got a whole room full of frames. So, but I know there are other sizes that are smaller than the 16 by 20, but also, I mean, like this here, I could use as long as my print filled the whole frame, because the inside is 8 by 10. So I could use this size, even though it's a 10 by 12, as long as my print is the 8 by 10. So this is one size that could be used. I wouldn't have a mat for it though. I'd have to create my own little mat.
I bet she meant 16 by 20 inside.
I think so too. I think that's what she's thinking, because we've always done 16 by 20, but let's wait to see what she says, because it has to be something that's easily found at the retail store, so that we don't have to have, you know, we don't have to have custom mat sizes. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah,
Because if you go with a 16 by 20 frame, but Jerry is saying that they have 16 by 20 frames with mats inside. I'd
have to look. I'd have to look
Yeah.
again.
I just went and measured mine, and mine are all 16 by 20 inside, which means it was an 11 by 14 photograph. And those are standard sizes, standard mat, standard frame, you know. And if you go non-standard, then it makes it a little more difficult for everybody to, you know, then you have to have a custom framing, which can be costly.
And
I've
I
never
don't
heard of
know-
anybody.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've never heard of anybody specify including the width of the frame, because the width of the frame could be a ½ inch or it could be 4 inches.
Right, yeah, no, we're just talking about the overall,
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I would think.
was
I think
just
I would.
holding up something.
Here's what I think is going to happen. She's going to say 16 by 20 with the maximum of like a 2-inch frame or something.
Yeah. Anyway, so,
And I usually, and like I mentioned before, for something like this, I mean, I almost can see like if possible, just going black frames. Because where we're an organization, I mean, this is just my personal opinion. Anybody's welcome to disagree with me. But if you're having lots of photographs on a wall, it's almost kind of nice to see them like all framed the same, because then you're not looking at different colored frames and you're able to concentrate on the photographs that are in the frames. It makes it very cohesive for an exhibit. And where this is, you know, a group exhibit, I don't know if I'm overstepping, but I almost would suggest going with just basic black frames and white mats.
Totally agree.
So, I mean, that's something we can bring to the committee and have as a group when we put out the final details for it, that we can look at, because black frames are a lot easier to find a lot of times anyway. So I'll ask the other members and get that clarified as we send out information. Like Leslie, I gotta ask her. So, any other questions? Okay.
Thank you very
What
much.
else to share?
Thank you for your time.
Kim.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you,
I know
Kim.
this said to 7:30. I wasn't sure, you know, I figured with the talk, I didn't know.
This is perfect. This was perfect, yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah,
anybody can email me if you want a copy of the PDF. I can email it to you. I have saved it as a PDF to send out to whoever wants to view it and be able to get the link for the video. But you can Google, you know, wiring frames. A lot of them will show paintings more than photographs, but the concept's fairly the same. So, but if you have any questions, just contact me.
So is there a PDF document we can post maybe on the Facebook list?
I have the link. I actually copied the link. I could post the link that you did.
The video?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I can post the link for the video, but if you want the PDF of my presentation, I can share that.
We can put it, we have a documents place. That's
Yeah,
what you're
exactly.
talking
That's
about,
what I'm
right?
thinking.
Yeah, we have a
Okay.
documents place, Kim. We can put it there.
Oh, bless you.
Yeah, but we do, yeah. And I think anybody can put a document there.
Okay, I'll send it to Jerry because I don't know how to do all that.
Okay, or send it to me.
I'm partially computer illiterate,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay.
That's good. So you'll put the video up and Jerry's gonna put the PDF up? Is that what we just said?
I can share the video link on Facebook, and I'll send Jerry the PDF of the whole presentation, all my slides, so you can refer back to them.
Great. Thank
Some of the information's not on the slides, but if you have questions, just ask.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks
Thank
so
you,
much,
everyone.
Kim.
Thank
you.
you,
Bye,
Kim.
bye.
Very much.
Bye.
All
Very
right,
helpful.
bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Kim.